afternoon, everybody. I'm Dave Robbins with End Time Ministries. Thank you so much for being with me on this edition of End of the Age. Now, I wanted to give you, because of everything going on with this Ukraine situation, and there's a lot of speculation going on. Is this World War III? Is this the Battle of Armageddon? Is this the end of the world? I mean, there are things flying everywhere. All kinds of news stories. So I wanted to kind of settle the issue here, and I wanted to give you an update, though, because a lot of things are happening in this Russia-Ukraine thing. So I pulled some excerpts from a Vox article, and I'll go through some different ones, go through what Marco Rubio has been talking about on his website, and bring you up to date. So the Vox article, "The Dangerous New Phase of Russia's War in Ukraine," explained. So what's going on? Well, Vladimir Putin's war obviously raging on. And you know about the NATO training facility that was bombed this weekend. As I was going to the pulpit, the pastor come and talked to me and said, "Man, have you heard what happened?" I looked it up, and I mean, that's very close to Poland right there, you understand. And this situation is just escalating. Well, it's raging on, and it's signaling a frightening escalation on the ground. Russia's war in Ukraine has now stretched on for 2 weeks plus. And it's just a relentless bombardment of that country's cities, towns, that has led to more than 500 civilian deaths, destroyed civilian infrastructure. You've seen the pictures and different things, the videos, and has forced more than 2.5 million people to flee Ukraine. And obviously it's created a new humanitarian crisis in Europe, as well as food shortages for that region, some of the Middle East region, Northern Africa, and different places. The Bible talks about famines in the end time. Jesus warned in Matthew 24. Well, it looks like they may be seeing one this year. It could reach America with everything they're doing, you know, to try to regulate everything here in the United States, and the price of gasoline going up. I mean, imagine being a farmer that has to ride a diesel tractor all day for days on end, filling that up with $5, $6, $7 an hour, $5, $6, $7 diesel gas. So the devastation of this Ukraine-Russian war, it's far from over, everybody. The scale of the Russian invasion, the shelling of these major cities like Kiev, which is the main goal here, that's the capital, and then Kharkiv in the east, hinted at Russian President Vladimir Putin's his larger aims to seize control of Ukraine with the goal of a regime change. That's what he's trying to do. And though its military is far bigger than Ukraine's, Russia's apparently confounding strategic decisions and logistical setbacks, combined with the ferocity of Ukraine's resistance, have stymied its advance. Now, he may eventually get to his goal, but the Ukrainian people are fighting for all they're worth. And really, the war is about the Battle of Kiev. John Spencer, he's a retired Army officer and a chair of the Urban Warfare Studies at the Madison Policy. He was talking about this at that forum. And taking Kiev would mean taking control of Ukraine, obviously. Be like Washington, D.C. here in the United States. Or at least deposing the government of Volodymyr Zelensky, the Ukrainian president whose obvious defiance has galvanized the Ukrainian resistance. And most experts believe that Russia is going to prevail, that the sanctions that we're putting on him, they haven't stopped him yet. Especially, he's now went to China and said, "Hey, can I get assistance here?" Well, they're allies. And so even though supposedly China put sanctions on them, you know, it's all political, folks. And you've got to understand, look at the big picture here. Look at the Russia, China, Iran situation. And they're in complete allegiance with each other. So even though they put sanctions on them, it's all political. Could be all for the news. But it looks like Russia is going to prevail, if everything keeps going like it is now, especially if it can cut off Kiev and the Ukrainian resistance from supplies and start maybe starving them out or keeping them from being able to resist. And so obviously with NATO not wanting to get involved, the United States not wanting to get involved, because that would escalate the situation, I mean, to probably a nuclear conflict very quickly. It's really a horrible thing what's going on over there. I'll get into a little bit more, and then we'll talk about World War III and the Battle of Armageddon.
As soon as you say end time, they say, whoa, the end of the world. When's it going to be? And you can see this mask of fear. I'm not telling you the end time is coming. I'm telling you, you live in it right now. Daniel chapter number 7, verse number 4. The first beast was like a lion. We have the eagle used continually to depict the United States of America. You see it on governmental we are the generation for which these that you will not miss one segment of understanding the end time, because I've had many people tell me it's changed their life forever. Many of the major prophecies of the Bible are given to us 2, 3, some of them as high as 4 or 5 times. There is not any chance it's not going to happen, because it's in your Bible, it's prophesied, and the prophecies always coming back.
You know, unless something drastic changes, it appears from all we can tell that the war in Ukraine is likely to become more violent. They're bringing in mercenaries. I mean, all kinds of people are coming in on the side of Russia, and it's becoming, it's a horrible situation. I mean, the United Nations has confirmed at least, I think it's just over 1,500 civilian casualties, and including 564 killed as of March 10th. And though these numbers are, likely undercounts, I mean, because they're not just in there looking through the bodies. And however, somebody sent me a video, and I've got to mention this. Because there is propaganda on both sides, and there is corruption both in Ukraine and Russia. Somebody sent me a video of a news reporter that was talking about 59 dead, and there were black body bags behind him with people supposedly dead laying in it. But you can see plainly one of the body bags blow up, and the guy reaches up and pulls the body bag back down over him. Now, maybe some of you have seen that, but honestly, I have read about this stuff till my eyeballs are about to fall out, and I still can't figure out 100% what's going on totally. I know there's a war going on, that is true, but as far as the motives and all these, the motives on both sides and what's going on, and is Zelensky really what he says he is, and who's funding some of this, and I understand history. I understand the history of the USSR going away and everybody declaring independence, but yet Vladimir Putin says that Ukraine should be ours. We're going to take that back. And the taking of Crimea in 2014. I understand all the history behind it, but when it comes right down to it today, Vladimir Putin didn't do this under Trump. Was he emboldened to do this now that when he saw what happened in Ukraine, that our administration was totally just really didn't know how to handle any type of a situation like that? And so I'm really trying to figure all this out because people want to know, is this World War III, the Battle of Armageddon, what's going on? I'm looking at it from a prophetic perspective. Is this thing going to last? Is it going to escalate to the point where it could go into a World War III? But the real motives, it's just kind of, there's propaganda on both sides, and it's just crazy. So these numbers, they're likely undercounts because they don't know for sure. But as intense fighting in some of these areas, it's made it difficult to verify some of these statistics. But the fighting across Ukraine has forced more than 4 million people to flee from their homes, from the cities. Many of them have had to get out of the country. Many more are trying to. And of course, that's according to the United Nations. Can you trust those reports? And you know what, there's so much propaganda. So, just, you know, a question that I get a lot. How did the war in Ukraine, and that I've had, how did the war in Ukraine begin? I mean, and what's happened so far? Just quickly. You remember that for months, Russia built up troops along the Ukrainian border, and they reached around, what, 100 and close to 200,000, between 190 and 200,000 on the eve of the invasion. At the same time, Russia issued a series of maximalist demands to the United States and NATO because they included an end to NATO's eastward expansion because since NATO was created, many nations that came out from under Russia when the USSR dissolved and they declared independence, and now they're members of NATO. And so Vladimir Putin has looked at this and said, hey, stop your advance, don't come any closer. He doesn't want NATO right on his border. And so, and then, of course, the ban on Ukraine entering NATO, he doesn't want that. And among other security guarantees, he decided to invade. Well, all were non-starters for the West. And so the short answer, though, to all of this is why Russia decided to follow through with an invasion. Vladimir Putin decided to. He could have said, it's not going to happen, and it wouldn't have happened. And, but yet he said, hey, we're going in, and they did. So from Vladimir Putin's perspective, many historians of Europe have said that the enlargement of NATO, which has moved steadily closer to Russia's borders, was certainly a factor, if you understand the grand scheme of things here. But Putin's speech, if you remember the speech on the eve of the invasion, it offered another clue. The Russian president basically denied Ukrainian statehood. And he said that the country rightfully belongs to Russia. He had already taken over Crimea. And so, but Russia's history of incursions, invasions, and occupations under Putin, including Chechnya, Georgia, and Crimea, have foreshadowed a new, even more brutal war. And seen through this lens, many believe him not to be a madman, but a leader who came to power in the lethal siege of Grozny in Chechnya in '99. Anybody who would do something like this under these pretenses, I think you got to have a little madman in you. However, and has pursued increasingly violent policies and who has been willing to inflict civilian casualties to achieve his foreign policy goals, not caring about human life. Now, I mean, bombed a hospital with pregnant women and different things in it, and I mean, I saw the pictures today, horrific. I mean, stop already. But in 2014, Russia launched the invasion of Ukraine that culminated in the occupation of Crimea in the south. Now, I want to say that when they did that, here come the rumors about World War III and Armageddon and all these different things. They're taking Crimea, and here we go. It didn't end up in World War III. Later that year, Russia deployed hybrid tactics, such as proxy militias, soldiers without insignia, to attack the Donbas region, where 14,000 people have died since 2014. And then on February 22nd, in the days before Putin launched a full-fledged war on Ukraine, he sent Russian troops into Donbas and declared those two provinces that they were independent of Ukraine. So this time, according to the former State Department of Russia specialist Michael Kimmage, Putin miscalculated the difficulty of taking over Ukraine. But still, as the days go on, the war could escalate to unimaginable levels of violence. Now, according to the U.S. intelligence estimates, about between 2,000 and 4,000 Russian personnel have died in the war. So there's a lot of things going on here. You say, well, what about the biolabs? There's a lot of things people are talking about, and we should talk about them. I wanted to go over some excerpts from something I found on Marco Rubio's website. Remember that he talked to this lady, I think it's Nuland, and she basically admitted that there were biolabs in there, in Ukraine. But on his website, on Senator Marco Rubio's website, it says this, and I'm quoting, Senate Select Committee on Intelligence Vice Chairman Marco Rubio, he questioned at this meeting Director of National Intelligence Arvil Haines and CIA Director William Burns at the committee's open hearing on the worldwide threats. Rubio says this, Undersecretary Nuland said that there's these bio research facilities in Ukraine. And there's something in those facilities. It's dangerous because we're afraid the Russians will get a hold of it. I mean, if they were creating cotton balls, we wouldn't care, right? But we're doing everything we can to keep them from getting a hold of that. Now, Marco Rubio continues and says, now I understand that there's a difference between a bioweapons facility and one that's doing research. But he says a bioresearch facility is totally different thing than a bioweapons facility, because you could have samples of a deadly and serious pathogen, but that doesn't mean you could weaponize it or that you're working on weaponizing it. But because people ask themselves, if there are these facilities there, big question mark there, there's a lot at play here. And this is not on you, but a long time ago, this should have been acknowledged that there are these labs in Ukraine, and a lot of these, the fact checkers just said, don't even mention the labs because they don't even exist. But Marco Rubio says they absolutely do exist. He says, so what I think got some people fired up is that when she said, we're worried that the Russians will get a hold of these facilities, because that implies that there's something in those that is dangerous. I don't know if you could shed some light on that or on how there can be things in the lab that are dangerous, but they may not be weapons labs. So that was a conversation that Marco Rubio had with the head of the CIA and one of the other guys that he interviewed. The fact of the matter is, he says these labs are there. We know they're there. And there's got to be something dangerous in them, or we wouldn't be worried about the Russian forces getting a hold of them. So there's a lot of things going on that you may not know about. That they're saying there's many of them in Ukraine. And certainly we would not want Russia to get a hold of them if they had these dangerous pathogens and a lot of different things in them. However, how have we responded so far? We're not going in and just hammering the Russians, right? The United States and our allies have basically imposed unprecedented sanctions and other penalties on Russia. Now, I will say, I know that Russia just went to China for aid in helping in this. And China may very well help them. But the sanctions do appear on some scale to be working. And so that makes you ask the question, well, then why did Joe Biden pull the sanctions off of Iran to allow money to start flowing into their coffers? And this is another thing that I haven't thought, that I've thought about, but I didn't even put in my program today to mention, is that Iran is upset because it looks like maybe this Russia-Ukraine situation has maybe just put the Iran nuclear deal on a back burner for right now. And of course, they were hoping to get a deal done. Right when it looked like it was about ready to be signed, this Russian thing kicks off. And so Iran's not very happy about that, and we'll talk about that in just a moment when we come to the war. But the U.S. is doing almost everything it can without officially being a party to the conflict, because obviously we go in there and it's Russia and the United States head to head. Both of us control 90% of the world's nuclear arsenal. Now, that could be World War III very quickly. However, the U.S. has funneled 17,000 anti-tank missiles so far, including Javelins and Stingers, to Ukraine. And it has explored arrangements through Poland for Ukraine to acquire additional fighter jets, and is considering sending more anti-aircraft equipment. But President Biden rejected the U.S. enforcement of a no-fly zone in Ukraine because a military policy that polls has surprisingly been well among Americans, but essentially means that attacking any Russian aircraft that enters Ukrainian space. Now, you can imagine what that would do. 78 national security scholars came out against a no-fly zone, saying that that scenario would edge the U.S. too close to a direct conflict with Russia. That's something we want to avoid at all costs, folks. And now, we've had the questions. I mean, there are prophecy people coming out of the woodwork. There are news people that are not prophecy that are saying, hey, this, Donald Trump even said, hey, this could spin into World War III. So when you talk about World War III, the Battle of Armageddon, future prophesied wars, some people say, what was the Psalm 83 war? They're just throwing all kinds of stuff out there, and it gets you so confused. So what I wanted to talk about was Revelation chapter 9, verse 13 through 21. Or I'll go 13 through 16. And we'll talk about the clues. Because Revelation 9 is the next prophesied war to occur on God's prophetic timeline. It's a specific war. Jesus said there would be wars. You'll hear of wars and rumors of wars. This Russian-Ukraine thing could be one of those. But when we get into the specific World War III, the Sixth Trumpet War, at this point, that's not that war. And I know we're coming up to a break. We'll get into it. I'll give you the clues about what we're looking for in a World War III scenario, and we'll talk about some different things when we get back from the break. But this is very important. We need to go over this because a lot of people are throwing out a lot of things, and you would think we're entering 3 or 4 or 5 different wars at one time, right?